The committee also noted concerns over the relatively high non-performing loans ratio of the Zambia Industrial Commercial Bank, which is standing at 9% and against the regulatory threshold of 10% by the Bank of Zambia, which could pose risks to its financial stability, Mr. Speaker. The committee therefore recommends that the bank enhances its credit risk management practices, including stricter credit assessments and more effective underwriting and loan recovery measures, Mr. Speaker. Additionally, the committee noted that domestic finance options such as fixed deposits were explored but proved more expensive than external financing. However, both institutions, Mr. Speaker, had not pursued alternative financing through shareholders dilution by investing additional investors via preferential shares. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, the committee recommends that these institutions explore such options as a means to attract additional and reduce reliance on debt financing. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, the committee acknowledged that while both Cabinet and the National Assembly approve of external borrowing, where necessary, controls to prevent unsustainable debt contraction by state-owned enterprises, the committee expressed concern about the lengthy approval process, which could place them at a disadvantage compared to private sector entities with fast approval processes. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, the committee recommends streamlining the approval process to help state-owned enterprises compete more effectively in the market. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I extend the committee's gratitude to all the stakeholders for their valuable contributions. The committee also expresses its sincere appreciation to you, Mr. Speaker, and to the clerk of the National Assembly for the support provided throughout this process. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move.
Yeah. Does the seconder wish to speak now or later?
Now, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Lundazi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the motion that has been ably moved by the chairperson of the Planning and Budgeting Committee. Mr. Speaker, I just have a few things which I would want to bring out as this ZICB and ZNBS require the support of us as members of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, Zambia National Building Society intends to borrow in order to grow the housing and make it more affordable. I wish to underscore that the committee recognition of the borrowing plan role in promoting access to affordable housing and finance for small and medium enterprises is critical. And Zambia can only develop, and we can only be able to meet the 8th National Development Plan if we are able to provide affordable accommodation for our people in Zambia. Mr. Speaker, the second issue that I would want to bring to the attention of the House is the concern that the committee noted over the poor financial performance of most state-owned enterprises such as ZESCO, Zamtel, Zampost, Zambia Railways, and Zambia National Broadcasting Corporation. Mr. Speaker, these or most of these state-owned companies mostly do not make any profit. They are mostly bound to make a lot of losses. So when the witnesses appeared before the committee, the concern by the committee members was how possible was it that the Building Society and ZICB were going to manage to recapitalize and be able to post profits, unlike what has been obtaining all this time. Mr. Speaker, The committee, though, was informed through the investment vehicle, the IDC Corporation, that it had developed a long-term strategic plan to transform its portfolio companies and ensure sustainable returns for both IDC and the government. There was still a concern, Mr. Speaker, by your committee as to why IDC, being the parent of all these companies which are now coming to seek for loans as individuals, the IDC would have been the mother body to be able to obtain the loan and be able to disburse to most of these companies. Mr. Speaker, there was an issue of enhancement of SME financing through ZICB. Mr. Speaker, the Zambia Industrial Commercial Bank aimed to facilitate affordable credit to SMEs and small-scale farmers. Mr. Speaker, your committee was concerned that indeed ZICB should remain with its objective where it obtains the loan and it shouldn't change and prefer to give people who are already well-to-do but maintain the reason why they are getting these loans. Mr. Speaker, another issue which was brought to your committee was the issue of foreign exchange risk management. Though ZICB intended to hedge against this risk by lending in local currency for clients with local income streams, thereby protecting borrowers from currency fluctuations, there was a concern. Money which is borrowed in foreign currency would still be paid back in foreign currency. Mr. Speaker, there was a concern that bringing these issues to Parliament was taking extremely long and disadvantaging the people who are in the money market. Mr. Speaker, your committee was informed that there was need to streamline the process as this is disadvantaging ZICB and Zambia National Building Society. Mr. Speaker, the extended approval process for public bodies' loans place them at a competitive disadvantage against private entities. The committee, therefore, recommends developing streamlined approval mechanisms to facilitate timely access to necessary funding. Mr. Speaker, there was also an issue of enhanced oversight through live audits. Mr. Speaker, to ensure real-time corrective action and transparency, the committee recommended that implementing live audits by the Office of the Auditor General would enable timely responses to the financial mismanagement issues. Mr. Speaker, there is very little that I can say about these institutions which have come before the House and seek the support of the members who are in the House today. Mr. Speaker, with these few remarks, I beg to second and move.
Thank you. Any further debate? The Honourable Member for Kafinsa.
Mr. Speaker, the pleasure is all mine to make a few comments to this very, very important report, the report which is titled 2025 Public Bodies External Borrowing Plan. From the onset, Mr. Speaker, I want to put it on record that the Public Debt Management Act of 2022 is a very good piece of legislation. It is actually the reason why we are even discussing this issue. If we didn't have a law in place to deal with public bodies borrowing money and needing Parliament to have this discussion taking place, Mr. Speaker, would probably not have been discussing this matter. I'm aware that this law, the 2022 law, is an amendment to the initial law, which was initially approved by Parliament. I think that must have been the year 2020. So from the onset, it must be put on record that from a legal point of view, Mr. Speaker, what we are performing today is a requirement of the law. The law demands that if a public body wishes to borrow money, it is our duty as Parliament to interrogate why they want to borrow that money, the interest rate for which they will borrow that money, and how much money will be raised from that investment. And this is why, Mr. Speaker, I'll quickly take you to page 2 of the report of the Honorable Chair of the committee, representing you, Mr. Speaker, and I also want to thank Madam Vice Chairperson of the committee for this particular report. Page 2. On page 2 of the report, Mr. Speaker, there is a table labeled Table 1. This table, Mr. Chairperson, is referring to how much money the Zambia National Building Society wants to borrow. So the Zambia National Building Society wants to borrow $35 million. And from the report, the loan tenure is 15 years. The first thing I would have expected this report to cover are the payment schedules, how the money will start coming back. Because you see, Honorable Speaker, if we lend out money, because Zambia National Building Society will essentially be borrowing money and then issuing mortgages. So the question now we must ask ourselves, and I'm happy that the Minister of Finance is present, do we have the payment schedules that will show? Do we have predictions? Do we have estimations of how the people that will lend this money to will be able to repay? Because the issue here basically is not whether we should find money to provide mortgages. The issue, Mr. Speaker, is whether the people that will be given these funds to invest into housing will actually have the capacity to repay back. So point number 1, and this is my submission to the Minister of Finance, and this is my submission to the Honorable Chair, we needed in this report some form of assurance that as we lend out the money we are borrowing, because there are two things happening, Mr. Speaker. We are borrowing 35 million kwacha, $35 million, and we have to lend it out. Some people have to get that money and go and build. So the question is, do we have a strategy to recover the money? Are we assuming that whoever gets this mortgage will actually be able to pay back the money within the 15-year period? And I've noticed that the interest rate is actually 21.5%. So I'm asking myself, as a Member of Parliament, if someone borrows money from the Zambia National Building Society, what is the interest rate for borrowing that money? Because we are borrowing at 21.5%, according to your report. Now, if someone has to go to ZNBS, at what interest rate are they going to borrow? And will that correlate with recovering the level of investment that we would have put in? So, Honorable Chair of the committee, I hope as you respond to this matter, I hope as the Minister of Finance responds, we need to be told how this money will be paid back, apart from the general design of a mortgage. And I think that the percentage at which we are lending out, this has to be clarified. And we need to be told whether that lending rate will be affordable, because we've been discussing in this August House the cost of borrowing. So I hope, Minister of Finance, you will be able to respond to this particular matter. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, in your report on page 3, there's reference to 1,325 households. These are the households that are going to get mortgages. My question to the chair of the committee, do we have a categorization of these households? Who are these individuals? Are we targeting people that are in urban setups? Are we targeting districts in Zambia where people have been relocated to go and start work? For instance, the new districts that were set up. You are aware, Mr. Speaker, that Zambia had 73 districts. Now we have 116. Is the strategy to target the extra districts that have been created? Is that the concept behind this particular contraction of a loan? So I expected that this report would be more clear so that we know very well that this $35 million we are borrowing is targeted at this particular provision. Lastly, due to the limitation of time, the Zambia Industrial Commercial Bank, you are aware, Mr. Speaker, that I'm on record asking where the Workers for Invest Trust will go. We were told that the ZICB will take on board some of the workers from Invest Trust. The report indicates that ZICB wants to borrow $30 million, and this has to be repaid in 7 years. That is what your report is saying. I would have expected that in this report, there should have been some form of mention on how we are going to get all the workers from Invest Trust integrated, because now there's liquidity in ZICB. I'm very passionate about the workers of Invest Trust because I know that we could have done better in managing that problem. My proposal, therefore, would be if we are getting $30 million into ZICB, Mr. Speaker, it would be good that we actually look at the number of workers that we've not been able to integrate from Invest Trust into ZICB, because the liquidity is there for them now to be able to manage the fund, because $30 million would definitely need people to manage the fund. And I hope that Minister of Finance, as you come to respond, you will be able to refer to how we are managing the integration of Invest Trust into ZICB, given the money that we are going to approve as lending facility. Lastly, I know that I only have 54 seconds to comment. I would have also expected that ZICB, apart from targeting agriculture, because from this report, it appears the focus is agriculture. I would have expected that with the energy crisis, there's been a lot of appetite for entrepreneurs to go into things like selling solar, trading into this particular subsector, the energy subsector, which clearly has a lot of potential. If today we lend money to someone who is setting up solar panels, solar systems, and solar batteries, Mr. Speaker, there's a high chance that that person will recover their returns. So I hope that as you respond, you may also deal with the issue of, apart from the agriculture sector, could we have approved this funding to ZICB to also invest in the energy subsector? Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, I have limited time. I would have hoped to be given more time to comment, but I wish to support the proposed public bodies borrowing plan, and I hope that next time we'll be given ample time to comment on this matter. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Chamano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for according the people of Chama an opportunity also to say some few words on this very, very important report. And I want to thank the Chair and the Vice Chair for coming up with this very good report. Mr. Speaker, I have very few areas to comment on. And I think the first one will be Head 21, Loans and Investment, under the Ministry of Finance and National Planning. Mr. Speaker, I noticed that under the 2024 national budget, 18.8 billion kwacha was allocated under the loans and the investment, and under the 2025 national budget, 21.9 billion kwacha. Mr. Speaker, I feel that the increment is not enough, looking at the challenges this country is facing at the moment. This country is facing...
Order, Honourable Member. Order. Ahead of you, there is a motion that you are supposed to speak to. So you are contravening against the business of the House. What is on the floor now that is being transacted is a motion. We haven't reached there yet. So appropriately, we will accord you the chance to debate. Now let's look at the motion that has been presented on the floor and offer your contributions against it or with it. So you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think let me withdraw now and I will come and debate it. I think.
The Honourable Member for Lunte.
Mr. Speaker, the people of Lunte have no objection to the proposed borrowing by the Honourable Minister. The people of Lunte would like to just submit on two things. First, Mr. Speaker, it's on the impact of this proposal on the 2025 proposed budget. Secondly, a few comments on one borrower. Honorable Minister, just a few days ago, we approved the borrowing plan. The borrowing plan is reflecting the number of 34.7 billion kwacha. This proposal you have brought, because as far as I know, government guarantee is government borrowing. My honorable colleague here, honorable member of parliament for Kanfinsa, was just speaking to the capacity of the institutions to ensure those who borrow from them will be able to repay in order for the institutions to pay back their creditors. If they fail, it then becomes the responsibility of government to be able to repay the debt. Therefore, government guarantee is government borrowing. Now, if we already have approved the borrowing plan, and you have now brought another borrowing plan, another government borrowing plan, what does that say to the credibility of your budget? I just wanted you to take that into account, because you are now varying your budget before it is approved. You can imagine. We are varying the 2025 budget before it even passes the assembly. I think that, Mr. Speaker, I actually do think that the Honourable Minister needs to think critically about that issue. You will imagine that this budget, which is not yet approved, was presented on the 27th of September this year. This same year, 1 month later, there is an adjustment to the budget. What do you say that? What do you say to that? This is the question I would like to put before you, Honourable Minister. The other issue is I would like to comment on just one borrower, the bank. I think that for those who create homes and so on, I have very little to doubt a number of things about them. But for the bank, recently government decided to hand over another bank which failed to this particular bank. This bank fails, you hand it over to this one. A few months later, they are coming to you as government and saying, we want to borrow, guarantee our borrowing. How did we then decide that this same bank should be the one to take over a failing bank? For me, these are the issues that we need to critically consider. If I were anyone that side, Honourable Minister, I would have recommended that this particular bank has no capacity to take over another bank, so that that failing bank should have been given to another entity with capacity, not one which would come to government and say, now that we have taken over the other, assets and liabilities of another bank, we are now failing. Therefore, give us more money or guarantee for us to borrow. This is a credit risk to the government of the Republic of Zambia. I would like you, Honourable Minister, to consider that your role should be to reduce the credit risk as opposed to increasing the credit risk of the Zambian people through government interactions with those that are borrowing and burdening the Zambian people. Creating this risk is already a problem. What more if it crystallizes? Then the problem becomes steeper. So my sense is that advice ought to be offered to these institutions from the onset, as opposed to when they do all sorts of mess-ups, then we come and start saying they borrowed. Mr. Speaker, I have no objection to the borrowing. First of all, even if I had an objection, UPND has no other way of solving this problem. They have written in this report, which I've read, that they considered options. In this report, they considered options, and these options were too costly. So UPND would have no other way of coming out of this problem other than borrowing. Mr. Honourable Minister, I wish to support your proposal for borrowing, but as I tender those issues for your consideration. Thank you, sir.
The Honourable Member for Shuangandu.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to comment on the motion ably moved by the chairperson of the Budget Planning and Budgeting Committee and seconded by the Honorable MP for Lundazi, in which they are recommending to this August House to approve a public body's external borrowing plan, which was prepared to facilitate borrowing of two public institutions, namely Zambia National Building Society and Zambia Industrial Commercial Bank. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues who have spoken before have highlighted some of the challenges. And for me, I reluctantly support this motion based on the challenges highlighted in the report. Honorable Kafaya was just speaking to some of the acquisitions by one body, which is the Zambia Industrial Commercial Bank, which in this report is said to be stable, of course, and have got the adequate liquidity for them to borrow. However, the report has also shown that on page 4, the bank has increased its non-performing loan ratio as a result of acquiring the two banks, the insolvent Intermarket Bank and the recent acquisition of the Invest Trust Bank, which have triggered their non-performing loan ratio to 9%. And 9% is just below the regulatory recommended 10%. And so, Mr. Speaker, the risks that have been highlighted by Honorable Kafaya are very valid and very important to observe. Further, by the Honorable Minister of Finance acknowledging and accepting that the consideration of local options has been found to be costly than external borrowing is worrisome, Mr. Speaker, because that speaks to the performance of our economy. Because if the economy was really sound, the options that have been highlighted here would have been very suitable. There are options such as fixed deposits from institutional investors, which was under consideration, and this was found to be expensive. The other one was dilution of shares by issuing preferential shares. These would have been local solutions, Mr. Speaker. The risk of borrowing externally is such that there are certain fundamentals that cannot be assumed. The exchange rate, for example, which is not stable right now. The shocks, external shocks, could also pose a very serious risk. And like Honorable Kangombe was saying, this will then impact on the percentage of repayment from the borrowers. So, Honorable Speaker, we would have loved the Honorable Minister to address the local economic performance of government. Because really, borrowing is a 35 million for Zambia National Building Society and 30 million for the Zambia Industrial Commercial Bank could have been easy. It could have been easily mobilized locally. And if you look at the investment portfolios they are looking at, Zambia National Building Society, it's about building. How is the cost of materials? Today, you can't go and buy roofing sheets the same price as yesterday. Later on, a week after. So all these are issues that are very critical. The building of housing now is a challenge for citizens. So if you are going to borrow expensive money, and then you expect that Zambians are going to benefit, and we have seen the projected numbers that are being targeted here by the analysis of the borrowing. They are saying to provide approximately 5,000 households and registered business targeting SMEs and agriculture. Again, the same report is also telling us that this intervention of government using limitation of the Zambia Credit Guarantee Scheme will pose a challenge to the small and medium enterprises. So what are we going to achieve, Honorable Minister? So in as much as we would want you to allow these institutions to borrow, yes, and you have the report says that they won't pose any risk to the balance sheet. They will depend on their balance sheet to borrow without recourse to the treasury. But ultimately, the people that will be borrowing are people that have got a direct benefit from the treasury. So it's important that we look. Honorable Minister, if you have heard me, the interest rates will depend on the cost of money that is being borrowed. And again, I've already said that the issues of exchange rates, which are not under control. If it was, today a dollar wouldn't have been costing 27 kwacha 13 kwai. We would have loved it to be below 20 kwacha. But it's moving, and it's not going down. We all know before the end of this year we'll be hitting 30 kwacha. So these are things that are beyond our control, and so we shouldn't take pride in borrowing from external sources, because it might be beyond our control. And like I said, there could be other external factors that might be beyond our control. So our emphasis should have been the minister to try and stabilize the economy. Yes, you have spoken to the investments that are going to be generating a lot of revenue. Why should it be so much of a problem? My colleague was just talking about the banks that have gone under, which have been taken over. So if these fundamentals cannot be addressed locally, we should not take pride in borrowing externally, because it will be continuously difficult and unsustainable. Mr. Speaker, I thought I could add my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Chilobe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before the people of Chilubi speak to this borrowing plan, I would like to appreciate that this is what the committee has done, or Parliament has done, is what it should be. Mr. Speaker, the people of Chilubi expected that according to Article 63D and Article 207, Sub-Article 1 and Sub-Article 2, this would have been done on Tazama, this would have been done on the Ndola Dua Carriageway, and we wouldn't have had problems with that. But I think the people of Chilubi would like to go on record that having taken this route for the public bodies, the Ndola Dua Carriageway and the Tazama are due, still remain in brackets, not following the procedure of the Public Debt Act as well as the Constitution, as it may be. Mr. Speaker, my reference is mainly to the role of Parliament on approving such a debt. I think if you peruse through the articles that have indicated, Mr. Speaker, you would agree with me that the Ndola Dua Carriageway and the Tazama deal still begs answers in terms of this. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, the people of Chilubi would like to agree and appreciate and support the presentation which has followed a legal route, according to the people of Chilubi, that we have today the public bodies being approved in this manner. This is for the full reason that the suggestions put forward and where the borrowing will be going is in line with the 8th National Development Plan, especially on job creation, which Zambia National Building Society would contribute to about 10,000, and the other one would contribute to about 20,000, which is the Zambia Industrial Commercial Bank borrowing. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, I want to bring your attention to the issue of agro business, which will be supported under the Zambia Industrial Commercial Bank. I think it's time that we started aligning our agro approach when we talk about agro-business. We know, for instance, the Minister of Agriculture did report that the facility we got for the irrigation, for the blocks that are supposed to be farming blocks, which was $300 million, did not pay well. And I think we need to scrutinize that this borrowing is going to benefit the people. Mr. Speaker, I also want to bring to your attention that the structure of the Zambia National Building Society, mainly, the beneficiary structure is account order based. And I think I'm speaking like this, I would want to declare interest that one of my earliest account that I held when I was a young person is with the Zambia National Building Society, and I've been following the Zambian Building Society for a longer period. And therefore, I'm a bit grounded in understanding how this is being dispersed. Meaning that the 1,225 households that are supposed to benefit possibly would be account order based, which to me, I think they have to expand in around the beneficiaries. Mr. Speaker, I also want to caution that the issues of liquidity and solvency for Zambia National Building Society and the Zambia Industrial Corporation Bank should be scrutinized properly. While the issues of solvency capacity and the liquidity capacity should be scrutinized, is that we have seen the trend where government-driven banks or financing institutions have been sustained because government injects money whenever these institutions grow weak legs. I have in mind the Meridian BIO saga that we had, faced problems. I have in mind the Zambia Development Bank, which had faced problems. It is in this line, Mr. Speaker, that with the issues of volatility in the market, especially the financial market, that are going on, we take precaution. I'm not saying that these two institutions should not borrow, but I'm saying that we take precaution, especially with the Zambia Industrial Commercial Bank, which is a new entrant on the money market, such that we may not face problems that the Zambia the Zambia Development Bank faced. Mr. Speaker, I want to look at the same issue that I've raised in terms of the Zambia Industrial Corporation, which on its shoulder the investment bank insolvency, meaning that all the responsibilities that the investment bank faced, it will be cushioned by the Zambia Industrial Corporation Bank. The lesson from the Development Bank of Zambia is still alive in our minds, and I think there is all need to take precaution that we do not face the risk of bank failure. Mr. Speaker, can I be protected? Young girl was just woken out from the sleep. Mr. Speaker, I was looking at the issue of putting safety valves in making sure that the Zambia Industrial Corporation does not face the same fate. If we are to look at the structure and the resilience that was demonstrated by the Zambia Development Bank compared to the new entrant on the market, I think they are incomparable. As such, there is always need that the borrowing we are doing today, which is a $30 million and a $35 million that we are trying to approve, may give these banks an artificial stamina that may think that they can compete favorably with other commercial banks because of such particular injection. And they will be enjoying that cushion artificially when there is serious volatility in the market. And I think on that note, Mr. Speaker, the people of Chirubi would like to submit that we take precaution in as far as we want to look at this, especially on the issue of back failure. I submit, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Ruena.
Quality.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The people of Luena are grateful for the opportunity to contribute to the debate on the report of the committee. And Mr. Speaker, for the first time, I align myself with many of the issues that have been raised by the colleagues that have already debated, including the Honourable Member for Lunte, except his conclusion. My colleague who has just debated before me, the Honourable Member for Chirubi, they have raised very serious and pertinent issues. And the Honourable Member for Lundazi, who seconded the report, Madam Speaker, raised, Mr. Speaker, mentioned something that I would like to pick up on. She said there is need to streamline the borrowing processes, options. Of course, I'm now adding, including the legislative framework to enable entities such as these two whose borrowing we are looking at this morning, be able to respond to the market dynamics out there.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, ZICB is a commercial bank, which, according to the Constitution, in the articles cited by the Honourable Member for Chirubi, Article 207 through to 211, are classified or is classified as a public body. Because the Constitution talks about state organs, state institutions, and we have summarized or included them under that classification. Which means that they are therefore subject to the public borrowing regulations, such as the Public Debt Management Act, as well as the Public Finance Management Act. Now, what that does to these entities, Mr. Speaker, is that they are always lagging behind their competitors out there in the market. Here we are talking about or approving as a National Assembly borrowing by this commercial entity, which is also subject to the Banking and Financial Services Act. Their competitiveness, Mr. Speaker, is something that we need to talk about when we are talking about streamlining the processes. And the submission by the people of Luena is maybe it is one more reason why we need to revisit the Constitution, because Article 207 down to 2011 needs to be clear whether every entity in which the government has a share, in which the government is either a partial shareholder or 100% shareholder, must be, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, must be classified as a public body. This is probably the only way we are going to get the benefits out of these investments that are being made. The National Building Society, Mr. Speaker, is an entity that could easily attract investment from outside the country, because the housing investment sector is a major target for pension funds throughout the world. But because it's classified as a public body and therefore subject to all these rigidities, it means that it cannot attract the necessary investment in order to sufficiently deal with our housing market demand in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, the submission from the people of Luena is, it is time that we looked at entities that are set up to operate as businesses, but in which the government is a shareholder, and allow them to operate as businesses like any other business. Even the Industrial Development Corporation that we have hoped was going to drive the industrialization of this country is still facing the same challenges. We cannot have entities that are supposed to be operating in the fast-moving economic environment. And diverting a little bit, Mr. Speaker, I would give an example of Zamtel. Zamtel is competing with the likes of Airtel, MTN, and other entities in this country.
But it is always so far behind these entities because of the rigidities that it has to comply with. And maybe the time has come for us to delink these entities so that they are allowed to run as businesses. That way, the nation is going to drive the maximum benefits from the investment in these entities. Mr. Speaker, on top of what my colleagues have already said, that's all we wanted to add to this very important report. And we support the report in this case, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honorable Minister. Order. The Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning will respond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank the committee for the report that they have presented. Let me begin by expressing my gratitude, indeed the committee, for the favorable consideration of the 2025 Public Bodies External Borrowing Plan. The 2025 Public Bodies External Borrowing Plan outlines projected external borrowing by qualifying public bodies totaling $65 million US. Of this amount, Zambia National Building Society, ZNBC, plans to borrow $35 million, while Zambia Industrial Commercial Bank, ZICB, intends to borrow $30 million. Both institutions will undertake this borrowing based solely on the financial strength of their respective balance sheets. So, Honorable Kafaya, there is no guarantee at all from the Treasury to these two institutions. They are borrowing premised only on their balance sheet. So all those points that you raise regarding the risk on the state, they do not stand because that is not the case. The financing proposed under the 2025 Public Bodies External Borrowing Plan aims to provide affordable financing to small and medium enterprises and also small-scale farmers. Additionally, it seeks to influence the pricing of housing finance in the market. Mr. Speaker, while we recognize that the 2025 Public Bodies External Borrowing Plan is not part of central government debt, it aligns with the objectives of the medium-term debt management strategy 2024 to 2026. The borrowing under the 2025 Public Bodies prioritizes minimal costs while maintaining prudent approach to risk management. Importantly, Mr. Speaker, what we are doing now is really a mark of transparency. This is the first time, as far as I can recall, for the Republic, that planned borrowing by public bodies are coming to Parliament for MPs to approve. Because in the past, this was not the case. Okay? This was not the case. DBZ, for example, Honorable Kafaya and Honorable Mr. Speaker, DBZ borrowed money. At the time when that happened, no one came to Parliament and said, DBZ wants to borrow money, do you approve? Zambia Railways, same thing. No one came to Parliament. So let's appreciate that we are improving things in terms of transparency. Mr. Speaker, I have noted with the committee's concern that while the Zambia Credit Guarantee Scheme is a valuable initiative, its stringent requirements to create significant barriers could result in higher lending rates for SMEs. I wish to inform the House that the Ministry is committed to reviewing and streamlining the criteria for eligibility, ensuring that the scheme remains effective while reducing barriers to SMEs. I've also noted the concern of the committee regarding the relatively high non-performing loan ratio at the Zambia Industrial Commercial Bank and the need for ZICB to prioritize the implementation of the effective strategies to reduce the non-performance loan ratio. And it was on the basis of this that some colleagues said, why is it borrowing when the non-performance loan ratio is high? And it was even alleged that this ratio has increased because of the merger with Invest Trust. I want to clarify, Mr. Speaker, and the clarification is that, recall, Mr. Speaker, that this is not the first time the Invest Trust Bank issue and ZICB, it is not the first time in the history of this country that two banks are being merged. A few years ago, Mr. Speaker, during the period of our colleagues in the PF, there was a merger. The merger was between Intermarket Discount House and ZICB. So it is not strange to merge institutions, and it's not a sign of evil, because even under the government, this is what we did, and we supported it, because rather than Intermarket Discount House closing business chaotically, with chaos, depositors losing money, the PF government wisely decided that they must merge Intermarket Discount House with the ZICB. Similarly, this government also wisely decided that Invest Trust Bank and ZICB must be merged. So it's not a sign of any economic mismanagement or something like that, as it was alleged, because this is the normal thing which our colleagues also did. And in fact, the loan ratio that was being spoken about, the loan ratio is not high because Invest Trust has been merged. The loan ratio is high because of the amount that the loans that the ZICB took over from Intermarket Discount House, which our colleagues did. Nevertheless, the loan ratio is certainly within the prudential ratio, so there's nothing to worry about that. Mr. Speaker, I also acknowledge the committee's concern that neither the Zambia National Building Society nor the ZICB pursued shareholder dilution through the issuance of preferential shares to attract additional investors. I wish to inform the House that the Ministry is committed to undertaking reforms to attract strategic equity partners in the management of state-owned enterprises. This will improve capitalization, management practices, and growth. And therefore, if at any point we come back to this House to seek support, I expect that that support will be provided. I've also noted the concern about what is seen as red tape in permitting state-owned enterprises to attract capital. Yes, we do recognize that. Perhaps we are disadvantaging them. But I believe that this is something that can be addressed as we continue to seek to improve processes. Briefly, to answer to a few other items, I I think actually I've answered most of the important. Perhaps only the one that remains is the view that these two financing institutions have not been able to get funding cheaper because of the economic environment. I've said it over and over. The economic environment in these countries was compromised by the following items. Number one, the unsustainable debt, which is very clear or close to resolution. Number two, the fact that the biggest industry in the country, namely the mining industry, half of that had been closed in the last 4 years ago, and therefore, Zambia being a mining country, if you close the mining sector, it follows that business in general is going to suffer. I'm very happy that the economic environment is certainly steadily improving because the mining issues that remained have been resolved, and as we stand right now, there's so much investment taking place in the mining sector. Therefore, the environment certainly has been sorted out and many things will fall in place. As I conclude, Mr. Chairman, let me once again thank the House for supporting the 2025 Public Bodies External Borrowing Plan. As a ministry, we will continue to updating the House on the implementation of the Public Bodies External Borrowing Plans through the performance reports which are submitted on a biannual basis. Additionally, we remain committed to ensuring that all borrowing is undertaken in line with the provisions of the Public Debt Management Act. Once again, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The Honorable Member for Momba, wind-up debate.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Let me thank the honorable members who have debated this report. That is Honorable Kangombe, Honorable Kafaya, Honorable Kampyongo, Honorable Fube, and Honorable Nakoka, and also for the highlights that which the Minister of Finance and National Planning has given. In doing so, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Kangombe was in fact asking the chairperson also to add a bit. Indicated such things like we would have loved to see the repayment schedules being attached to this. Now, Mr. Speaker, this is just a process where you are indicating the intention to borrow, and in doing so, usually the lenders will, or the committee will look at the key areas like the return on investments, how it sits now, maybe the capital adequacy ratios. Those are the ratios you want to look at, and also the issues like Honorable Kampyongo was talking about, the non-performing loans and also the current liabilities. So as a summary in terms of what do you see at these banks. But there's also a process. If you remember, one of our members, we requested that going forward, would want now to see where the debt has been contracted. Then at the time of the contraction of the debt, would want now as a committee to sit and look at now in detail the conditions. And I want to believe that things like the repayment schedules would then arise at that point. And the other point he was raising was to do with the capacity to borrow by these the borrowers. We were informed, Mr. Speaker, that most of these borrowers are primarily and predominantly civil servants who go to these banks to borrow, especially for these mortgages. So at that point, then you are sure that there's some levels of security in terms of how the borrowing will be done. Then also it was the issue of the categories. 1,325 mortgages, which gives an average of about 570,000 kwacha per mortgage or per borrower. And when we engaged the two institutions, they indicated that these amounts basically, they are looking at low-cost housing. And most of these civil servants, Mr. Speaker, are situated in semi-rural areas where, you know, the cost of materials are not as high. as in towns like maybe Lusaka. And also some of them we in fact we borrow to buy building materials. So Honorable Kangome, we did look at that. Then the other one was the Honorable Kafaya was lamenting as to why this was not brought together with the annual borrowing plan. Honorable Member, you may want to know that this is totally different. There's no connection between the annual borrowing plan as provided for in the Public Debt Management Act, Section 12 of the Public Debt Management Act, highlights the areas where the Minister of Finance would borrow, such as to finance government budget deficit, which he did through the annual borrowing plan. And also, item D also gives the Minister the mandate to provide, if need be, the public body, a loan to a public body. So the two are quite completely different. There's no relation between the annual borrowing plan and what the Minister has brought now before this House. I thought, maybe, Mr. Speaker, maybe I just needed to highlight those few ones because the Honorable Minister of Finance has advocated address to the other issues. At this point, Mr. Speaker, it's now just also my honor and privilege just to thank the members of this committee for the work they did, and also to thank the members of this House because, as you can see, Mr. Speaker, they are all in support of the intention for this external borrowing for the two institutions. Mr. Speaker, I want to say thank you for giving this opportunity once again. As the chairperson of the committee, I submit, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I put the question. The question is that this House adopts a report of the Planning and Budget Committee on the 2025 Public Bodies External Borrowing Plan for the 4th session of the 13th National Assembly, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 16th November 2024. As many as of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary say no. The ayes have it. The question is resolved in the affirmative. The clerk will now read the order of the day.
Supply motion, 5th November, resumption of debate.
When the House adjourned yesterday, Thursday, 7th November 2024, the House was considering the motion moved by the Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning that the House now do resolve into Committee of Supply on the estimates of revenue and expenditure for the 1st January 2025 to 31st December 2025, presented to the National Assembly in September 2024. Any further debate? The Honorable Member for Lunte.
Mr. Speaker, yeah, it's good for me to make a comment on the Minister's speech, the budget speech for 2025. Honorable Minister, I'm just going to comment on content on page 5, which I will link to content on page 30, and later comment on content on page 26. Honorable Minister, this is what you said on page 5. Madam, to build economic resilience and improve the livelihoods of the people, government has set the following macroeconomic objectives for 2025. A, B, C, D, E. Of course, you went up to F. I'm commenting on E. Reduce the fiscal deficit to 3.1% of GDP. Honorable Minister, it is your target to reduce the fiscal deficit to 3.1%. Let's go to page 30. Page 30, gross financing. And I will come back to this gross financing because for me this is net financing. But you have labeled it gross financing, 34.7 billion kwacha. And you are saying this is 16% share of the budget, 2025 budget, but it is also 4.3% share of the GDP. Honorable Minister, my question to you is, if your target in this book is to reduce the fiscal deficit to 3.1% of GDP, Why is what you are calling net financing going to 4.3 of GDP? I think this is inconsistent. And I'll move on to page 26. Honorable Minister, under General Public Services, you have provided 1.4 billion as equalization fund. You know, I compared that amount to the 2 billion you have given to cash for work. Now, when you compare the two items, cash for work and equalization fund, and then you increase the amount for cash for work, what are you saying to the people? Are you really considering development, or you are considering just something else? Honorable Minister, I'll consider compensation, the amount on compensation. You have increased it to 772 million kwacha from the previous 500 million. Sir, from the time UPND came into power, only UPND cadres and UPND leaders have been compensated through the consent judgments. Honorable Minister, will you confirm that even this 772 million will just go to UPND cadres and leaders? Can we qualify that this is a UPND money, UPND members' money, so that it's clear that no Zambian people will have anything to do with these compensations? Honorable Minister, I will move on to health, and I would like to be sober there. I observe...
Order. There's a point of order by the Honorable Minister of Information and Media.
Honorable, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to raise this point of order. As you know, sir, I rarely do raise on points of order, and when I do, there must be compelling and excruciating circumstances. You are happy because your seats were not declared vacant. Mr. Speaker, I raised in terms of Standing Order 71, in terms of content of speech and how factual statements or submissions made before this August House must be. Is the Honourable Member of Parliament for Lunte, Mr. Speaker, in order to make such startling and hair-raising statements without substantiating the same, to the effect that from the time UPND came into office, in terms of compensations, only UPND members have been compensated. Without adducing such evidence, Mr. Speaker, because, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, you see this kind of behavior. That's why Tonse Alliance is going nowhere. Mr. Speaker, I need your serious ruling, because this is a house of record and people out there might take the misleading and mischievous statements being made by the Honourable Member for Lunte as gospel truth. I thank you, sir.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Lunte is completely out of order. Completely out of order. This house is not order. This house is not a house of assertions. You must be at all times factual. You have to talk from a verified point of view. So, to make presumptions that whoever is being compensated or the would-be person to be compensated is UPND without proper facts that shouldn't be encouraged in this House. We should at all times be factual. So the Honorable Member Folunte is completely out of order. You may proceed, Honorable Member Folunte.
Mr. Speaker, Minister Frank Tayari, lawyer Martha Mushpe, the Mukuni family, these...
But Honorable Member, I've guided you. I've guided you, and...
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister of Finance through Mr. Speaker, I would like to take you to the content under social protection. Honorable Minister, you have provided 16 billion kwacha under social protection to protect people. Now, social protection covers poverty, it covers unemployment, it covers disability. That's noble. But this amount you have provided is the highest I have seen since I came to this House. And on one hand, you may be commended for raising the amount. But on the other hand, take this number to Cabinet and go and tell your Cabinet colleagues that we have increased social protection because we have created more poverty than any other government before. Go and tell your colleagues that we have created unemployment more than any other government before us. This is why we are raising the amount of social protection. But unfortunately, it is leading to unsustainability. This is why you are unable to even explain the fiscal deficit properly. On one hand, you say your target is 3.1, but actually you have raised it to 4 what was the number again? To over 4%. And in fact, it is more than that. Because what you are calling gross is net, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, I would like to end at your provision and health. And here I'm appealing. Honorable Minister, too many people are dying of cancer in this country. Your government, the UPND government, has decommissioned radiotherapy equipment at Cancer Hospital without informing the people. People around the country think that they can come to cancer and receive radiation when in fact you have decommissioned all equipment. Sir, consider to buy the linear accelerator for Cancer Disease Hospital. Consider to buy the Cobalt 60 for Cancer Diseases Hospital. Consider to buy all the units of radiotherapy so that cancer patients in this country can be able to receive a combination of radiotherapy and chemotherapeutic treatment so that this death, needless cancer death we are having right now, can be reduced. Honorable Minister, I would like to conclude my contribution by encouraging you to ensure that credibility of this budget is upheld. And I say so because even as we were deliberating in committees, people were saying we will come through a supplementary budget. It's impossible, Honorable Minister, for a government to be talking about supplementary budget even before the budget you are considering is approved. It's impossible. That speaks directly into the image of credibility. And if you don't care too much to consider those issues, your credibility, sir, is at stake. I encourage you to uphold credibility of this 2025 budget in the name of Jesus. Thank you, sir.
The Honorable Member for Mwinilunga.
Mr. Speaker, shukra. Shukra means thank you in Arabic. Mr. Speaker, the estimates of revenues and expenditure for 2025 were prepared under very difficult conditions. Very difficult conditions in the sense that we are coming from very harsh drought, creating energy deficit, and therefore we are faced with low economic production. But I want to give accolades to the executive for coming up with the instruments that have provided resilience against hunger and against these vagaries that we have faced. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the government devised instruments like drought relief, food for work, cash for work, and enhanced social cash transfer. Mr. Speaker, everybody is benefiting from cash for work without looking at parties, without looking at where one is coming from. Is given countrywide without leaving anyone behind. And short or tall, yes indeed. Mr. Speaker, I also want to say that the compensation is given to the people that were abused. Just like when you are arrested, it means that you stole. So I think that there is equity in exercising the authority by those that are leading. Mr. Speaker, I now move to the issue of enhanced CDF. It's a good gesture, Mr. Speaker, that CDF has been increased. But I think one thing that comes to mind is that, yes, the CDF is increased, but there are a lot of constituencies that are so big that they are really not benefiting to this increased constituency development fund as much as the smaller ones are doing. And I have in mind constituencies like Nyimba, Munringa, Karurushi, Chilabombe, Kafiwe, Kasempa, Kapirimponshi, Chiruvi Island in Northern Province. So these big constituencies are distributed across the country. And I think it is important, that the government looks at delimitation so that these constituencies that I have mentioned could also benefit from this enhanced constituency development fund. Mr. Speaker, I now move on to infrastructure in Northwestern Province. I want to say thank you to government for using one of the instruments that governments the world over use to mobilize resources from the private sector, and this is the private-public partnership. And this is applied in Sorezi Road to Kipushi, also applied in Kambimba, Mutanda, Kasempa, Kawoma. We are very grateful for this. But Minister of Finance, the people of Northwestern Province would also want to benefit from the budget, from the Yellow Book, they were expecting that as you were reading the budget, the issue of Mwinirunga Jimbe Road will be resolved. We didn't hear you mention this road. We didn't hear you mention some of the infrastructure that the people of Northwestern Province want. Perhaps in your response, you would be able to explain to the people of Northwestern Province why some of the infrastructure that they require so much is not reflected in the yearbook or in the budget. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we are very grateful in Mwinirunga to government, because in the next 1.5 weeks we would be opening Kasenseri mine. In the next 2 weeks we are going to open Kasenseri mine. We are also grateful to government that the UPND government is acting responsibly. Whatever infrastructure was left by PF, the UPND government has taken over and trying to complete this project, and I have in mind the Mwinirunga District Hospital. We are very grateful to government. I also want to mention here that, Mr. Speaker, we have 3 feeder roads. 3 contractors are working on 3 feeder roads in Mwinirunga constituents, and the people of Mwinirunga are very grateful. It is our nature. It is our nature in Mwinirunga to say where we are happy, we say it out, and where we are not happy, we point it out. We are happy with the roads, we are happy with the work that is being done, but we are not happy with the main road from Sorezi to Mwinirunga and Jimbe. And therefore, I would ask the minister to come out on this one and explain to us. The other thing that I would want to mention, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of Rumwana and Karumbira. We would want Rumwana to stand on its own as a district, and also Karumbira to be a district on its own. We have districts that are very close to each other on the Copper Belt. We have Karurushi, we have Kitwe, we have Chingola and Chirawote, very close to each other. Thank you very much.
Your time is up. The Acting Leader of Government Business Adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the House do now adjourn.
The question is that the House do now adjourn. Any debate, any objection? The question is agreed to. The House? Is now adjourned.
You have been watching live proceedings of the House, and business for today has ended. Before we end our live broadcast for today, we have a look at what has been discussed in the House today.
And earlier on, when business resumed, Honorable Madam First Deputy Speaker did make 2 announcements. In the first announcement, she reminded the House that debate on the motion of supply, which was moved by the Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning on Tuesday, 5th November 2024, will be for a period of 10 sitting days up to Wednesday, 20th November 2024. In that regard, members of the backbench will be given priority to debate the motion in the first 7 days up to Thursday, 14th November 2024, while priority will be given to the members of the front bench in the last 3 days, starting from Friday 15th to Wednesday 20th November 2024, to respond to the various issues that would be raised by the backbench. Madam First Deputy Speaker encouraged all honourable members to use the remaining days prudently and debate the motion.
And in another announcement, the Honourable Madam First Deputy Speaker announced to the House that she had received communication to the effect that in the absence of Her Honour, the Vice President, who is attending to other government business, the Minister of Defence, Honourable Ambrose Lufuma, MP, had been appointed to act as leader of government business in the House from today, 8th November 2024, until further notice.
After the two announcements, Madam First Deputy Speaker went on to make a ruling. This is on a point of order raised on 2nd August 2024 by Honorable C. Mwitwa, Minister of Information and Media, against opposition members of Parliament for misconducting themselves during the address and departure of His Excellency Mr. Evaristo Ndayishimiye, President of Burundi. She did state that the point of order was premised on the President's practices, traditions and customs of the House and Standing Order 117 of the National Assembly of Zambia, Standing Orders 2024.
And in his point of order, Honorable C. Mwetwa MP raised two issues as follows. One, whether the members of Parliament on the Honorable Madam Speaker's left were in order to misconduct themselves by making running commentaries during the address by the President of Burundi, especially when he mentioned the donation that his country was giving to Zambia. And two, whether the ministers on the Honorable Madam Speaker's left were in order to spring up singing as the President of Burundi was exiting the chamber. And in her immediate response, the Honorable Madam Speaker reserved her ruling in order for her to study the matter.
And Madam First Deputy Speaker went on to state that the point of order by Honorable C. Mwitwa MP raised issues of members causing disorder during an address by a visiting dignitary. She stated that Standing Order 215D of the National Assembly of Zambia, Standing Orders 2024, states as follows. 215, gross disorderly conduct. A member commits an act of gross disorderly conduct if the member D attempts to or causes disorder of whatever nature during an address by the President or a visiting dignitary. And after having recourse of the verbatim record and relevant recording of the proceedings of Friday, 2nd August 2024, Madam First Deputy Speaker went on to give some details following.
And she did mention to the House that the video footage revealed that some members on the Honorable Madam Speaker's left could be heard singing after the visiting dignitary, and the Honorable Madam Speaker had left the chamber. Unfortunately, the verbatim report did not capture which members were singing, and she reminded the House that the conduct of singing exhibited by some of the members on the Honorable Madam Speaker's left as the visiting President exited the chamber on Friday, 2nd August 2024, is a serious breach on the standing orders and can attract severe punishment to the erring members. She then urged the honorable members to desist from such misbehavior, which is unbefitting and of the status of honorable members of Parliament. She also mentioned that as honorable members, they are expected at all times to conduct themselves in a manner that upholds the dignity, integrity and decorum of the House, as provided for Understanding Order 213-1 of the National Assembly of Zambia, Standing Orders 2024.
Additionally, she noted that there is a growing and worrying trend by members of the House to make running commentaries, some of which are vulgar and disrespectful when the Speaker's procession is entering or leaving the chamber. She cautioned the honorable members that such acts demean the dignity of the House. She also stated that the Speaker's procession is supposed to be a solemn moment depicting the commencement of business of the House, which is a serious event, and from now on, she did state that members will be expected to observe the necessary decorum.
Madam First Deputy Speaker also went to inform the House that she noted that the Honorable Minister based his point of order on Standing Order 117 of the National Assembly of Zambia Standing Orders 2024. However, Standing Order 117 relates to the consolidation of orders on bills and is therefore not applicable in this instance. And in concluding the ruling, she reminded the members to familiarize themselves with the new standing orders to ensure that correct provisions are cited in future.
And after that ruling, the acting leader of government business did give a business statement for the period 12th to 22nd November 2024, and we just take a look at some of the highlights that we should look out for during this period. He did point out that the House is expected to consider 3 private members' motion during this period.
And the House is also expected to consider 7 bills at second reading stage, and this is on 21st November. Some of these will include the income tax bill, National Assembly Bill number 22 of 2024, and also the value added tax, National Assembly Bill number 23 of 2024, as well as the mobile money transaction bill, National Assembly Bill number 25 of 2024.
And he also stated that the House is expected to start considering the individual heads of the national budget on Thursday, 21st November 2024, and he did state that the following heads of expenditure will be considered, some of which include Head 01, the Office of the President, State House; Head 02, Office of the Vice President; Head 03, National Assembly; Head 19, Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit, but just to mention a few.
Yes, so after consideration of the business for the next 2 weeks, the House went on to consider what was on the order paper for today, which included questions for oral answer under Standing Order number 80. And today we had 3 questions that were posed by members of Parliament to various, directed to various ministers. And one of the questions was from Lukasha, Member of Parliament, Mr. Chisanga, and he directed his question to the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, and he wanted to know whether government had any plans to allocate 10,000 hectares of land to the government of Rwanda. And part B of the question, if so, where the land is located, and part C of the question, what the Rwandese government intends to do to use the land for, and part C, what the consideration for the allocation is, and part E, whether the allocation will not result in displacement of persons. And in response to this question, the acting Minister of Lands and Natural Resources did inform the House that government had no plans to allocate 10,000 hectares of land to the government of Rwanda.
And question 111 did come from Mr. Lamek Hamwata, who is Pemba Member of Parliament, and he did ask the Minister of Fisheries and Livestock in A, what the cause of the delay in vaccinating the cattle for farmers in Pemba district who paid for the vaccination against Chitongo disease in September 2023. And the acting minister did respond that government had actually targeted 3,000 cattle for vaccination, and the number that was brought in was overwhelming, and hence the vaccinating materials could not cover for the extra cows. And in B, how many farmers paid for the vaccination? The minister did respond that 310 farmers had paid for the vaccination. And in C, how much money in total was paid for the exercise? The minister did respond that 179,400 kwacha was paid for the exercise. And in D, when the cattle will be vaccinated, the minister did respond that the vaccination will commence next month in December.
And after that, the questions for oral answer, the House went on to consider a report, and there was a motion that was, a motion that was moved by Member of Parliament, Mr. Fred Chatila, in which he urged the House to adopt the report of the Planning and Budgeting Committee on the 2025 Public Bodies External Borrowing Plan for the 4th session of the 13th National Assembly, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 6th November 2024. And we had a number of members of Parliament that debated this motion. We had Mr. Mulenga Fube, Member of Parliament for Chiluvi, amongst the members of Parliament that debated, and also Shiwangandu Member of Parliament, Mr. Kampyongo, as well as Mr. Christopher Kangumbe Kamfinsa, Member of Parliament, Mr. Mutopre Kafwaya, Lunte, Member of Parliament, and Mr. Mubita Anakoka, Luena, Member of Parliament, added their voice to this motion that was under discussion, and the motion has since been adopted by the House.
And then we did see resumption of debate on the motion of supply, a motion of 5th November 2024. This is a motion that was moved by the Minister of Finance and National Planning, urging that the House do now resolve into Committee of Supply on the estimates of revenue and expenditure for the year 1st January 2025 to 31st December 2025, presented to the National Assembly in September 2024. And we did see a number of members of Parliament debate to this motion. We did see Lunte, Member of Parliament, Mr. Mutotwe Kafwaya, debate to this motion. We also had Mwinilunga, Member of Parliament, Mr. Newton Samakai, debate to this motion. And so, Pauline, basically, this is the business that has been considered today.
Yes, so that is what we had for you today right here on Parliament Television. So we wish you a lovely weekend, and remember that we continue bringing to you live proceedings next week. So from all of us, wish you goodbye and lovely weekend.
That you can still watch your favorite shows from anywhere, anytime. Yes! Just download the StarTimes own app from Google Play or Apple Store, then register. You can link your DTT or DTH decoder to up to 3 devices by entering your smart card number and the last 6 digits of your decoder serial number. Then voila! You're good to go. You can also pay for your subscription, change your preferred bouquet and other self-services on the app. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Topstar. Enjoy digital life.
You can now advertise on Parliament Television and Parliament Radio. For more information, call 0977 854102 or 0977 536487. Parliament Television, bringing Parliament closer to you. My eParliament mobile application. My eParliament is a mobile application developed by the National Assembly of Zambia in order to bring Parliament closer to you. You can download and install My eParliament from App Store or Play Store. Once installed, you can raise your concerns, provide your input, opinion and feedback on various projects or decisions being made in your constituency. On My eParliament mobile application, you can listen to Parliament Radio. You will have access to parliamentary documents such as bills and acts which are considered in Parliament. You also have access to National Assembly social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. You can also watch parliamentary debates live on our YouTube channel. Download My eParliament now. My eParliament, bringing Parliament closer to you.